As you can see from part one, there's a lot of prep work that has to get done before you can really talk about Bloom theory. Bloom theory becomes really relevant in time and superposition because of that seismic dynamic to the spatial temporal fabric, that sleeping bear. Random chance doesn't want fixed states, either material or temporal, to happen at all. It doesn't want them to happen at all. We're placing a great deal of burden on greater being as biologic observers, requiring matter to conform to our experience, our interior experience, our temporally bound experience, our linearly temporally bound experience of being. The slides, the Kodak slides. Being doesn't function this way at a macro level. It's all in smears. It's all in temporal smears. Smears that are hyperdimensional and flow from the very, very large to the very, very small across multiple dimensions of time. And they know space not as a sort of empty containing medium, but as a flowing state as well that has eddies and waves and propagating functions that are themselves hyperdimensional, especially ingressively so, meaning that it descends fractally within itself across multiple, when we think about the fractal, we have to remember, you descend to multiple fractals, and then each fractal descends to multiple fractals, each fractal descends to multiple fractals, and so on and so forth. It tunnels in this kind of infinite webbing of itself, replicating ideas of the initial form over and over again. So the next thing to think about is that because we have these transmissive traveler selves moving from event to event through interstitial tissues, and then we have these come on, brain. These transmissive events moving through interstitial tissues. The travelers rather, and then you have the subordinate travelers working back and forth. Those subordinate travelers have a choice. They'll meet with a lot of resistance, but they have a choice. And the choice is that they don't necessarily have to repeat the precise path that they've traveled previously. Will they arrive at the same destination? Nearly 100% of the time, yes, either direction that they're traveling in. But with enough revision, maybe they can pop away and go someplace else. Or if we all act together, we can steer the temporal branch away and go someplace else. There's a nice synchronicity. But you want to appreciate that there is freedom of choice within those, insofar as you can transform what you are and gradually shift outcomes and characters of outcomes. Again, how does this affect you? Well, probably the same way that gravitational waves affect you, in that they do, but you aren't perceptually equipped. You don't have a perceptor that measures time. Time is something that you calculate relative to change, the vantage of change in your life. So you observe time's influence on being indirectly, but you do not have direct observation of temporal flow and of the spatial temporal fabric. Make sense? The reason that I'm bringing time and superposition up is because they're essential to, this ultimately is what Bloom theory is about helping us understand. And I think it's a good time now to sort of delve into Bloom theory itself, with an understanding that I will be revisiting both superposition and time throughout the lecture. So Bloom theory makes some really interesting suppositions. And the reason I think it's important to recognize that Bloom theory is my theory of everything. So currently physics is looking for the answer to everything with M theory. And what they're missing, first of all, is that the volume of energy that is required for them to prove the existence of a string in something like a particle accelerator is massive. So in order for them to observe what it is that they're theorizing, And the math is beautiful. I don't think that they're wrong. I think that in a very interesting way, they're driving at an acoustic model of the universe, which is synonymous with domain 2 of Bloom theory, which is song theory. So I do think that there's a lot of utility to N theory, but I don't think it's correct to keep looking for a floor to solve everything that comes before. I think what's missing, and you think of Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck popping their heads out of a rabbit hole, I think we missed the turn to Pismo Beach, and now we're off on a zany madcap adventure. Pismo Beach is nice. A little cold, I thought. Chilly, in fact. The water was quite chilly for an August day when I was there. But not colder than Santa Barbara. Yeah. I think that what we're missing is a containing form. A grain that's a container, that is persistent and consistent across all scales. That's what I think we're missing. I don't think we're missing some magic particle that unites relativity, particularly general relativity, and quantum, and Newton. I think that we're sort of missing the forest for the trees, which is that your body is a container. Alfred North Whitehead introduces the concept of holons, Holons. And I think that these are really useful to understanding the organization of physical being. I was introduced to holons in Sex, Spirituality, and Ecology by Ken Wilber. And it's interesting because Sex, Spirituality, and Ecology is really all about consciousness and Mr. Wilber's war against feminists. And I don't really remember much about ecology, and I don't really remember much about sex and spirituality. There's lots about. But Mr. Wilber ranks successions of higher states of consciousness as being holonic shell containers, where a larger form contains what came beneath, and the larger form contains what comes beneath. Both Wilber and North Whitehead describe these things as whole parts. So the best way to illustrate this is not with the Russian Kachinka doll, but it's with your own body. So your body is a whole, and it contains parts. And the parts that it contains are organ systems. And those organ systems are wholes, and they contain parts. And the parts that those contain are cells. And the cells are wholes, and they're made of parts. And the parts that they contain are organelles. And the organelles are wholes, and the parts that they contain are molecules, chemical compounds. The chemical compounds are wholes, and the parts that they contain are atoms. The atoms are wholes, and the parts that they contain are quanta. The quanta are wholes, and the parts that they contain are, whatever beneath quanta, all the way down to strings. Okay, so that's holonic thinking. I also argue in my work that we are cells in larger organ systems as well, that I call macroorganisms. And I think it's correct to say that a subordinate structure can't know what the succeeding structure's experience of greater being is. It can only know its structure and what it infers about its ingressive structures. So when you're thinking about holography, the larger containing and constraining holon is succeeded from what is contained, right? And what is contained is ingressive to what is, its behaviors give rise to and populate and sustain the larger structures that a holonic form exhibits at the successive level, which again contain and constrain. So you see the mutuation there. ingressive forms give rise to behaviors that succeed as, so that's why they're successive, and the successive forms have containing and constraining behaviors for what they are ingressed to. Okay, so it's important to think about that's a huge aspect, I think, of physics that I'm not seeing really adequately evidenced in our thinking. Another thing that I'm seeing with physics that I think most physicists are also missing is just how biased toward the masculine physics is. Physics is about balls, it's about rods, it's about force, and it's about charm, right? It's about a great many other things, but ultimately it's a boys' science so far. And we're missing the female component. And the female component gives us also the completion to each tier's holon, because we're just focused on a physical level, a particle physical level, on ingressive part, ingressive part, ingressive part, ingressive part, and we're not thinking about containing and constraining, containing and constraining, containing and constraining, and containing and constraining. So Bloom theory loves relativities. Bloom theory, and that's why I add to the relativities. Bloom theory loves quantum. I don't need to add to quantum because quantum kicks royal ass, and there's so much good stuff in quantum. And Bloom theory also loves Newtonian physics, right? But Bloom theory says what's missing is the feminine perspective, the chalice, the crucible, the bloom. I don't know why I'm afraid to show you my tattoo. You've already seen me in red shorts. Okay, so this is my reminder right here, right? That we all exist in a bloom state. That we all exist in a state of blooms. So the blooms are the containing and constraining forms. Do you want up on the couch now? Is there any reason that you're doing this? Come on, not right now. You're gonna get in. You're gonna make noise, and dude, no, seriously, I'm gonna throw something at you. You're either gonna help with this lecture. Oh, okay, now there are birds. See, this is why I can't pay him more. Like, he shows up part of the time and then he fucks off. Go get it. Seriously, you're a better hunter than you are a lecturer. Yeah, that's right. Go feast on it or some shit. So, yeah. What's missing from physics are blooms. So everything the universe does ultimately is a bloom. The universe itself is a bloom. A galaxy is a bloom. A planet or a star is a bloom. An atom, a molecule system, those are networks of blooms. Quanta are blooms, and you are a bloom. You bloom right here. You bloom from this point. Your navel, right? This is the actual center of you, not this perceptual stem right here, but your navel is the actual center of your being. And this is the point at which your father's semen crossed over into your mother's ovum, right? And pulled her through the other side of his mirror. And then she pulled him through the other side of her mirror. And you began to foam into existence from this point. And it's also the point at which you were connected to your mother during incubation via your placenta, which is a bloom. It's a very funny thing when you think about that connection and your infinite self, because we don't ever think about the umbilical cord, really. But you're a mushroom cap. It's true. You are a mushroom cap. You've just lost your stem. Where are we at on time on this bad boy? Okay, we're halfway through episode 2. All right, so you are a mushroom cap. Let me think about this. Is this a good stopping point? Yeah. Let's do a part 3. I think this is a good readiness point. So in terms of holons, what's missing from physics are containing and constraining forms, and which respect the principles of the feminine. You can think of them as crucibles. It's more useful to think about them as forms. The conversation that I'm having, or the lecture that I'm having with you right now, is creating a relationship. Relationships are also blooms. So when we get into the next lecture, we'll talk about blooms. We'll talk about the currencies of blooms. Blooms are at play. They're happenings. They're functions of universal play. And their currencies are behavior and experience, and everything that they interact with ultimately is some sort of relationship structure. All existence is relational. Okay? So we'll pick up there in a minute.